New Year's Eve. Welcome to our final episode of 2021. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Alberta Weekly. We've had so many wonderful guests in 2021. Today, we start the show discussing the changes in Alberta's political landscape. We bring in someone who's no stranger to politics or family. Home media mom Val Olson discusses how to communicate ideas with the next generation. Let's talk about the impact government decisions have had on Alberta families. So just like businesses need certainty, right? So do families need certainty and consistency from their government? And you're a mom, of course, right, Val? So you know all about this, but what have you been hearing from other parents? What were some of the unintended consequences from government policy and mandates this past year?
Well, what's really backfired, I would say, on the government is parents are starting to see what's actually going on inside of classrooms. So that's a big thing. Parents are taking hold of their children's education. And what's coming out of the classroom is surprising parents because many children were taking their classes online, many over Zoom. And so parents were like, wow, is that actually what is being called education today? So that backfired on the government, and parents are on the ball and they are involved and they want to see changes for the better for their kids. Also, mental health. I mean, it is so sad. And when you stop and you think about it, most homes have both parents working. That is what's common. And so, depression, job loss, just uncertainty, heightened anxiety, all those things are having consequences on Albertans, and the government is the source of that. So, we need to have more talking at the table for sure. People are also cutting ties and taking their faith back. And I think that is a good thing. There's not this worshiping almighty government for the source and provider of everything. People are looking in themselves and they're starting to come back to their morals and values and saying, look, we want to recover. We have hope, a renewed hope, and that's a good thing.
Okay, Val, so you've said before that politics starts at the Alberta dinner table, which is actually a paraphrase quote from Ronald Reagan. So what should be driving political policy?
Everything good, I believe, starts and happens at the dinner table. That's where problems are solved. And it's because the people around the table you genuinely care about. And that's not the attitude that we have in politics right now. But I think if we take that approach and people come to the table and sit down and listen to each other and ultimately strategize together with shared values and morals. And so we're all heading the same direction, good things will come.
Okay, so Val, since you're talking about the dinner table and people that you care about, obviously that includes our children. So what about conversations with kids? There are so many influential factors on our young ones, right? So what have you found as a way to share issues and ideas with your kids?
Well, homeschooling is a great way to do that. But if you're not homeschooling your kids, that's fine too. Sit down with them and bring them into the conversation. I know it's kind of old fashioned, but I'm telling you that it's tried, tested, and true to make time around the dinner table. Start there and turn off the TV, or at least hit it on mute, and start having conversations with your kids about what they think. I involve mine, and they range in age from 4 up to 16, and the perspective is always different.
Yeah, that's interesting. And with that said, how can parents advocate for the preservation of their morals and values in our society and in government? How can you kind of keep that going?
Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. That is my best advice. Have courage and bring to the table what you have. We all have these skills and dreams. Dream big. Don't forget about what you wanted in life when you were little, even when you're an adult. So many adults forget to dream big. And I know that for me, myself, my dreams are that we have peace and we have community and we have all these good things. And so you have to go after those things. And you have to have sometimes hard conversations, but that's okay. Don't be afraid of having a hard conversation. That's where healing truly does begin.
Up next, we talk about one very strong economic engine of southern Alberta, and it's not oil. Keep it right here. Welcome back. Alberta has seen its share of booms and busts, but there's an area of the province where agriculture is king and where our oil comes from seeds instead of the ground. Trevor Lewington from Economic Development Lethbridge joined us recently to talk about the Lethbridge and Medicine Hat economic region. Take a look. Now, Trevor, what is your reaction to the upcoming amendments of the Business Corporations Act that the UCP government is proposing? So the UCP claims that the changes will make the province a more competitive and attractive place to do business. But what are your thoughts? Have you had a chance to read the amendments?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Corporate governance doesn't normally excite most people. It's not a topic we see in popular media most of the time. But if you think about the recent story where the Rogers Empire, a family-controlled corporation, big boardroom fight, control of this multi-billion-dollar important national company came down to control and how control was exercised based on BC laws where that company is incorporated. So the Business Corporations Act is not the most exciting read, but certainly it's an important document. It is important for companies in terms of how they're set up, how their boards function. So the UCP government has introduced changes that will modernize that piece of legislation. Some of that is very good news, allowing for digital meetings, allowing for non-written resolutions, which is just a reflection of the modern era and the fact that most things happen in an electronic way, which was not reflected in the legislation. But there are a number of other structural changes that potentially, the way they're being positioned by the government, will be able to attract more corporate investment to Alberta. And so that's the hope, is that by creating more flexibility and structure, by leveraging some of these other tools that are not really available in Canada for corporations, that this will incent some new investment in our province. So again, more to be debated. I think that the bill will make its way through the legislature and sort of the debating process. But I'm interested to see sort of the reaction from the business community and whether they view these changes positively or not.
Switching gears here, so Lethbridge has a new mayor and council. So what are you hearing from business owners? Are they confident in the new leadership team?
Well, every election is an opportunity for change and for renewal. So I think that's the exciting time as we have a new council getting down to work. Certainly, many of those new and even some of the returning councillors campaigned on platforms that talked about supporting the business community, creating jobs, the importance of economic development. So right now, council's really only been in place for about 3 weeks since their organizational meeting. They've gone through orientation training. They're going through some learning sessions with all of the different city departments and functions. And the next major piece of work for them is their strategic plan. So they're going to build a document that really sets the tone for the next 4 years. And so when that comes out, I think we'll have a real good sense of what this council stands for and what their priorities are. Certainly, we'll be advocating for a focus on economic development, creating jobs, supporting the business community. And I look forward to working with this new council and kind of hearing their ideas on what those priorities are.
Yeah, it should be exciting for sure. Now, have you heard any news of potential increases in new business ventures in our area?
Well, my team here at Economic Development Lethbridge has been very busy. We're back to pre-pandemic levels of inquiries and activity, so that's great news. Lethbridge is certainly very interesting to a number of international companies. They're interested in the agri-food sectors in particular. We have a strong tech sector here, and of course, some very creative manufacturing companies. So I would say there's definitely momentum and renewed interest in our area. And that's a tribute to our two world-class post-secondary institutions, the fact that we have great road access. We're right on the Canamex corridor, north and south. We've got Highway 3 east-west, of course, great rail connections, and of course, recent improvements at the airport. So Lethbridge has all the right ingredients, and we are definitely seeing that increase in interest and inquiries for this region, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, you'd mentioned before how many job vacancies there are left from the pandemic. But Trevor, do you know what the unemployment rate is right now for the Lethbridge Medicine Hat region?
Yeah, so the Lethbridge Medicine Hat economic region actually has the lowest unemployment rate in the province. We're currently sitting at 5.3%. And for Lethbridge specifically, so when we look at the city of Lethbridge or the census metropolitan area, our unemployment rate is actually 5.2%. And that's the ninth lowest for any census metropolitan area in the country. So we're in pretty good shape. The other major measure that we track is participation rate. And so that's a measure of the number of people in the workforce. And that was actually down last month, which is the first time it's decreased since June. And so when you look at that, the size of our workforce has shrunk a little bit. And last month, we did lose 1,200 jobs. So that's a bit of a concern. Even though we're in good shape and we do have the lowest unemployment rate in the province, we'll continue to keep an eye on that because we want to make sure that people aren't exiting the workforce and that we don't continue to see those job losses.
When we come back, we hear from Medicine Hat's very first female mayor. Welcome back. There were some exciting mayoral races in Alberta during the fall of 2021, and one of the big winners was Lindsay Clark, who became the first female mayor of Medicine Hat. She joined Hel Roberts to talk about some of the plans for this thriving southeastern Alberta city.
Were you surprised that you won by such a large margin, more than 4,600 votes over Ted Clugston?
Well, I didn't really have any expectations. There were a couple of polls, like a couple of Facebook polls that came out ahead of time. So had an inclination that if those polls had anything to say about it, I did have a good chance of winning, but certainly felt very blessed and overwhelmed to have seen so much support from the community.
So Mayor Clark, what was your motivation for running as mayor for the Gas City?
Yeah, I really wanted to work towards restoring the good governance in the city, or augmenting it, building on the good governance. So transparency, accountability, and public participation. So those things are really important. And I want to make sure that our city government is acting in a way that's consistent with our community's values. And so I felt like we were drifting away from those a bit. And I really wanted us to realign.
Now, a big issue that came up during the municipal election campaign was the controversy over the city's process to contract out Invest Medicine Hat. Can you share a little bit about what you felt was wrong with the way that was handled, and as well what you plan to change with the process moving forward?
Yeah, this was a big issue during the election. My concerns were with the process that was used, and whether it was fair, whether it was going to get us the best deal as a city, whether we were doing the right thing at the right time. So a new council was coming in, and it was a 10-year contract, and it would have precluded the new council from having a say on those very important economic development issues. So moving forward, we want to have a really, really strong economic development engine in Medicine Hat and our region. So collaboration, again, is going to be really key over the next 4 years.
So what areas do you think the city needs to become more transparent and accountable to Hatters?
Overall, there's certainly some things that aren't necessarily pertinent. Like you can't. It's a balance between flooding people with information, and just giving people information that they need to participate in policy making, decision making, and holding the government accountable. It's easy to kind of overlook. Sometimes it's not even about, we're withholding this information. It's just there's not an active engagement with the community. It's not constantly on your mind. Like, we need to be transparent. We need to be accountable to our community. And so we need to focus on that over the next 4 years. Everything needs to be questioned. Why are we not disclosing that? Should be a question we're always asking.
How about attracting more business to the Gas City? What's the plan moving forward in that regard?
So there again, it's the long-term economic development strategy with an industrial cluster study. We're actively looking to attract business all the time, for sure. But when you look at developing clusters, it's about making sure that you're looking at what the gaps are in your current, for example, supply chain, in your current industrial mix, so that if you're spending resources to go out and actively attract business to come, that business is going to be very successful in your community, and it's going to provide added benefits to the existing industries that are there. And so that requires a lot of work with the existing businesses and industry that are here, making sure that that they're able to communicate to us what they need, where are they feeling pressure points. And so part of that business retention and expansion is also attracting businesses that, for example, reduce their transportation costs or reduce their capital inputs. So we want to make sure that we're always really trying to integrate and create synergies within our own economic ecosystem here.
Up next, we take a look at the economic outlook for Alberta in 2022. Welcome back. As 2022 sneaks up on us, how are things looking for the Alberta economy? Joining us to discuss this is Charles St. Arnaud, the Chief Economist for Alberta Central, which is the Central Banking Facilities Service Bureau and Trade Association for Alberta's credit unions.
Now, Alberta's gone through some pretty tough economic times over the last few years. Now, especially, we're in the middle of the pandemic right now. When will we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel here in our province?
Well, we're already kind of seeing it. Like 2021 was kind of the rebound from the hard hit from COVID and the secondary shock from the drop in oil prices. So we had a very sharp economic contraction in 2020. And then now economic activity has been picking up. And we expect that by early 2022, the Alberta economy will pass its peak that it reached in 2014. So we'll finally start to expand from where we were 7 years ago.
Now, as usual, the energy sector is leading the way here in the province, but do you think that will continue throughout 2022? Will we see oil at $70, $80 US a barrel consistently?
The oil industry has been very important in 2021, but it's the economic recovery has been relatively broad-based. It's been consumer, it's been oil, it's been a bit of investment. But obviously, oil has been, I would say, probably one of the least told story or the least understood story. The turnaround in that industry has been extremely important and major. If we go back in the middle of the pandemic in April 2020, the value of the oil produced in the province was about $1 billion per month. turn around to October 2021, it's now 10 billion. That's about 3 billion more than the peak we had in 2014. So the value of what we're producing now is higher than it was in the previous boom. And that's major because that will have some very positive tailwind on our economy, pushing wages, pushing income for the workers industry. It will also lead to better investment in the industry. But I will temper that we're probably not coming back to the boom years of the pre-2050. But it's still a positive tailwind on our economy going forward.
Now, Charles, some industry analysts say that our province is actually now one of the leaders in Canada for renewable energy projects. Can you explain why this is happening and where maybe some of these projects are being built?
Well, I think gradually people are realizing that Alberta has a tremendous potential in renewable energy. We know that there's a big transition worldwide to reduce our carbon emission, to decarbonize our whole economy. And obviously, here in Alberta, we can either see it as a challenge to our more traditional industry, which is oil and gas, or see the opportunity. And this opportunity are really in the renewable. We have the resources. We have, well, being in southern Alberta, we see how many days of sunshine we have, and we can really harvest that. We have tremendous wind power. Also, what sometimes I find is lesser exploited, but has a lot of potential. Geothermal could be big in the province, especially considering our expertise with all the drillers in the oil and gas industry that have tremendous expertise into drilling holes in the ground. So we have those capacity. It's just what we need is the investment, but also seizing those opportunities as they arise.
Now, Lethbridge and other areas here in southwestern Alberta has a thriving food processing industry. Where do you see that headed to in 2022?
That's for sure. It will continue. Like everybody needs to eat. That's and there's a lot of know-how. One of the things that's often misunderstood or not really well appreciated is how much we talk about tech industry in Calgary, when we talk about Amazon cloud computing and all those kind of things, but that sounds maybe sexy, but a lot of the agri-tech industry is very important, very big in Alberta, and there's a lot of investment happening in that, and a lot of it is centered around the Lethbridge area, and that will continue because, well, nothing will change. We'll still need to eat in 2022 and 2023, and finding those new technology to reduce the cost and improve yields will be important.
How about the agriculture sector here in southwestern Alberta and maybe across the province? Will things continue to improve for a lot of our producers?
The hope is we'll get a better harvest in 2022, especially that with very weak supply around the world for wheat and other agricultural products, prices are still very high. So if they just get normal yields in 2022, they'll be able to have very strong revenues.
Well, that's it for us in 2021. Please come back and see us again in 2022. If you're on Twitter, please follow me at Jeanette Rocher to get updates on what we're working on. We'll see you again next year for another edition of Alberta Weekly. Happy New Year to you all, and have a great week.